Hello, everyone. My name is Chloe, and I was born and raised in Maryland, a tranquil state with tree-lined streets and long rows of houses. My parents were there for most of my youth. My mother was a sweet woman who smiled at me from early morning when she made breakfast till dark in the little kitchen. She adored my father, a quiet but responsible guy who worked tirelessly to provide for our family. The entire family lived in a modest, humble house filled with affection. Everything in my recollection was wonderful, or so I believed, until I was 15 when my world imploded. My mother died suddenly after a short illness, and I had no idea what was going on. The sense of emptiness developed as I saw my father become lonely in a house that was once full of laughter. We survived, but we were no longer the same family. Every morning I went to school. Every night I returned home. My mother was no longer present, but the kitchen and modest meals remained the same. Every dinner included only 2 persons, but the gap between me and my father seemed greater than the size of the home. When I was 18, my father remarried. Took me by surprise, despite the fact that I knew he deserved to be happy again. His new wife, my stepmother, was a nice, compassionate woman. She brought her son Samuel, who was 1 year younger than me. At first, it seemed weird, as if my existence had been flipped upside down again. Things were no longer the peaceful state I had known. But then, when I was just 15, my world crashed. My mother died suddenly after a short illness, and I had no idea what was occurring. The feeling of emptiness grew as I saw my father become lonely in a house that was once filled with laughter. We continued to live, but we were no longer the family we had been. Every morning I went to school, and every night I came home. It was still the same kitchen, the same simple meals, but my mother was no longer there. Every meal had only 2 people, but the distance between me and my father seemed farther than the space of the house. At first, I always felt awkward trying to talk to Dad and stepmother, who sat in the living room discussing work and future plans. Samuel and I exchanged looks of uncertainty, which caused me to lower my head. Family dinners were the same, gradually becoming an opportunity for us to get to know each other better. Although Samuel frequently picked up food for me, a modest gesture that made me feel a bit odd. He was always quiet, didn't say much, but occasionally gave me longer looks than normal. I wondered if I was being too sensitive or if it was just a younger brother's feelings for his new older sister. But it was undeniable that as time passed, there was an underlying tension between us that neither of us spoke about. The feelings that should have been just sisterly, but since it became more difficult to distinguish, there were moments during the day when I suddenly felt my heart beat faster when Samuel was near, and I hated that feeling, hated that I had Samuel creep into my room as usual. We'd usually have a little talk before he went back to his room, but this time he stayed for longer than usual, his eyes deep in thought as if he wanted to say something. I didn't know how to react. I just felt the atmosphere between us become strangely stifling. The silence dragged on. I felt confused, and before I could think further, I nodded slightly, inviting him to stay a little longer. We sat there in the darkness in the dim light, 2 strangers who were close in a way that no one could explain. To be honest, I liked Samuel quite a bit, my brother. He was very handsome in a way that I couldn't help but notice. Sometimes I wondered if Samuel and I were both at a critical stage in our lives. I was a freshman in college, and he was a senior in high school, busy preparing for big exams. We were both trying to get used to the new rhythm of life, but the tension between us was undeniable. There were evenings after school when we sat on the sofa in the living room, the TV lights softly shining, but both of us were silent, not knowing what to say. The feelings between Samuel and me were ambiguous, not exactly the feelings of normal siblings. I realized that I liked him for real beyond the limits of family love. The feeling confused me, but I couldn't deny that every time I saw Samuel, my heart beat faster. When we accidentally met on the stairs and our eyes met, there was something in his eyes that I couldn't ignore. It was a peaceful evening like any other, but perhaps I knew it wouldn't end the same way. My parents had gone on a trip for about 5 days, leaving Samuel and me alone at home. At first, we simply thought it would be a time to relax away from the supervision of adults. That night, we sat together in the living room, turning on a romantic movie. It was a movie that neither of us was too interested in, just looking for something to kill time. I prepared some dried squid fruit and a few cans of beer as a little relaxation after a busy week. The distance between Samuel and me suddenly got stuffy. No more the comfort of two sisters enjoying a simple moment. I could feel Samuel's eyes on me. They were no longer the usual look, and a heated sensation began to spread through my body, but I said nothing and sat there holding the beer can in my hand to maintain calm. But before I knew what was going on, Samuel embraced me. His movements were powerful, surprising, and enticing, and his kisses were frantic, as if all of the restrained feelings had suddenly erupted. I couldn't resist. My heart was racing, but my body reacted differently. We had pushed the boundaries of sisterly tenderness in the darkness and stillness of the room. That night was no longer a typical night. It was a watershed moment, and I knew nothing would ever be the same again. That night, every boundary was breached. I couldn't deny that I'd allowed my emotions to take control and let something that shouldn't have happened to happen. Samuel and I spent the entire night together. Crossing all boundaries, we didn't say much. Everything seemed to happen instinctively according to what had been suppressed for so long. The closeness that we had tried to maintain was gone, replaced by emotions that we couldn't control. I remember very clearly the feeling of the next morning as the gentle sunlight filtered through the curtains. I lay there next to Samuel in the room that was supposed to be my own peaceful place to sleep. Everything around me was the same as the following days. My father and stepmother were still traveling far away, and we proceeded to make the most of that time. There was no longer any sensation of discomfort or awkwardness, but rather a paradoxical comfortably. We lived as if we were two people in love, free from the prying eyes of others. Meals were no longer family meals but private moments, just me and Samuel. Every night we sat together, watched movies, talked, and finally ended the night in the same bed. During those days I let myself forget reality. I forgot that Samuel and I were only sisters in name. We lived during that time as if we were a young, free couple without any worries. Everything happened so naturally and easily. Samuel and I resumed our roles as two sisters. Under one roof, we acted as if nothing had happened, as if every intimate moment had been a fleeting dream. My parents didn't notice. They kept smiling and chatting about their travels while Samuel and I just sat there silently, sharing glances, knowing that our secret would have to be kept forever. In the months that followed, we continued to see each other, continuing our secret relationship in secret. The sneaky times, the long sleepless nights began to happen like a habit. Whenever my parents went to bed early or had to go out, Samuel would sneak into my room, and we would cling to each other, as if there had never been a barrier between us. During the day we tried to act normal. Family meals continued as usual. My parents didn't suspect anything, and Samuel and I only made eye contact. This hidden tension made me feel short of breath, but at the same time I couldn't stop. The guilt was slowly eating away at me, but it wasn't strong enough to make me give up. I continued to live in secrecy. Every night, every moment with Samuel became so familiar that I feared I wouldn't be able to escape. I knew I couldn't let this go any further, so I started taking birth control pills quietly and carefully without anyone knowing. I feared the consequences of this relationship, but instead of stopping, I chose to control it. I tried to convince myself that everything was still. About a year later, Samuel graduated and proceeded to college, certain that we would not be discovered. He had to leave his home and go to another city to further his education. When Samuel went, I knew our relationship would alter, even though I didn't want to accept it. The distance between us made things harder. No more sneaky nights, no more quiet moments together. The distance forced us to put that relationship on hold, even though I still felt heavy with nostalgia for the past. After graduating, I decided to find a new path for myself. I applied for a job as an office worker for a digital company. The job wasn't anything special, but it gave me stability away from the days of conflict and emotional turmoil. That's when I met him, the man who changed my life forever. He is the owner of a fairly large hair salon in the city, a calm, confident, and charming man. From the first meeting, I was impressed by his strength but gentleness. He was unlike anyone I had ever met before. Every story and every look, he was unlike anyone I had ever met before. Every story and every look he gave me made me feel safe, something I had never felt in all these years. We fell in love quickly. Everything happened naturally, as if we fell in love quickly. Everything happened naturally, as if we were destined to find each other. Not long after we got married, we started to build the family life I had always dreamed of. Now we have a child together and life is more complete than ever. The days with him and the child make me temporarily forget the painful memories of the past. Although sometimes they still come back to haunt me in moments of weakness, I knew I had found a new home, a man worthy of love and respect. But somewhere in my mind, the memory of Samuel and those secret days had not completely disappeared. I wondered if I would ever truly forget it all, but now I had a family to protect, and that was what mattered most. Yet a deep part of me still felt guilty towards my husband. He was a wonderful man, always showing me genuine care and love, but every time I looked into his eyes I felt a weight on my heart, as if I was hiding a part of my past that he should have known. I don't know if I should tell him about my past with Samuel. Sometimes the thought keeps me up at night, torn between telling him everything or keeping this secret forever. I'm afraid that if I confess, he'll never look at me the same way again. Everything we've built, the little family I cherish, could crumble because of a confession. But on the other hand, continuing to live with this secret is like a rock weighing down on me every day. It makes me feel like I don't deserve the love he has for me. Honestly, I don't know what to do. I'm at a crossroads, not sure which path is right. Perhaps when you hear my story, you will criticize me for hurting many people, for making wrong decisions in the past. But I can only ask you, if you were in my situation, what would you do? Would you choose to confess the truth knowing that it might break everything? Or would you choose to keep silent, allowing the past to sink deep into your memory, hoping that it will never come back to hurt the people you love? I hope to receive your advice in the comments section below. If you were